What's the chance that Republicans will all flip on Trump if the files are bad enough? I got some news for you on that one.
Way, I got to give credit to Lauren Boebert to walk into the White House, the center of power, the free world, really, and to sustain that and to come back out and to be solid, and also to Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene. There was all the speculation that they might take their names off, and they never did. So it's not a hoax. It's not a moot point. It is a very serious thing. There are 1,000 victims, and there are survivors who have had a press conference with Ro Khanna and I, and that's what we're fighting for, justice for them.
Did y'all talk to them at any point during this, as the White House was making clear they were targeting these members?
I talked to them. I don't want to say which one I had this conversation with, but one of them was told, we can't let Massey have a win. How petty is that? I mean, this is more than about political.
Thomas Massey's a funny guy, you know. He's kind of occupies like the Rand Paul position for the House. Thomas Massey made an argument. I'm trying to see if I can find. Man, hold on. Okay, there's so much to get down to here. Okay, so look, the 218th signature on the discharge petition was officially signed last night when Grijalva was finally admitted by Mike Johnson into the House of Representatives, something he only had to do so the government reopening bill could be signed by the House. He did so. Then she signed it. 218. That's the amount needed. That forces a vote on the release of the Epstein files. Mike Johnson scheduled it for next week, which is actually pretty quick. He didn't have to do that. I'm not entirely sure why he did it that quickly, and it's very interesting that he did, and I'll speculate on that. The White House has begun a pressure campaign to try to get members of the House, Republicans, to not vote in favor of the release of the Epstein files.
Breaking news this morning: after 43 days, the longest shutdown in U.S. history, finally over. President Trump signing the bill to reopen the government late last night after it was passed by the House. But as Washington turns a page on that battle, new fallout is looming over the White House from the newly released trove of documents in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Among the files, multiple emails from Epstein that specifically mention Donald Trump's name. The White House is now ramping up pressure on House Republicans after 4 of them, including 3 women, signed a discharge petition to...
4 may have signed the discharge petition, but it seems like far more Republicans than that are going to be signing for the release of the actual Epstein files. I understand that many people have said this before, and for the most part, I've avoided casting my name into the fire by making predictions about something like this, but I think this might actually be the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. Donald Trump's ability to do whatever he wants is predicated on unanimous consent from his own party. As long as his party holds the House, the Senate, the White House, and the Supreme Court, and they all follow in line no matter what he does, no matter how stupid it is, he can more or less get away with everything. But as soon as there's any pushback or opposition from within his party, things start to fall apart quickly, which is why they've been so aggressive in cracking down on dissent. Republicans expecting mass defections on Epstein vote. Thomas Massey said it best on CNN. And if I could just find the Thomas Massey to CNN on the Epstein files. This vote is going to be on your record longer than Trump is going to be president. And what are you going to do in 2028 and 2030 when you're in a debate and they say, how can we trust you? You covered up for a pedophile back in 2025. And that's the line right there. I said it, man. A lot of people understand Trump is both old and his popularity is waning. The argument from a lot of MAGA supporters was that Trump would be more popular if he had the ability to do whatever he wanted. The reason he became unpopular in his first term was because he was held back by neocons. Well, now we see what happens. He's not held back by neocons anymore, and he's more unpopular than ever. Everyone knows how this is going. Nobody believes it's going any other way. Nobody believes in the eternal Trumpian dynasty. They know where his popularity is heading. And a lot of these Republican politicians are in their 40s, in their 50s, hell, their early 60s. They want to be in power decades from now. Do they want to hitch their ride to this wagon forever? That's the argument Massey's making. And if that's where the winds are blowing, then Trump is genuinely over. There is nothing Trump can do against both near unanimous dissent from Democrats and dissent within the Republican Party. Absolutely nothing. Senior Republicans privately believe dozens of Republicans will vote for it, possibly 100 or more, according to 5 people granted anonymity to speak candidly. They rushed to the news with that one. And that's just the number of people who went to Politico. Democrats pushing the petition publicly predicted Republicans would rush to support the measure once it hit the floor. Or in other words, once the tipping point is reached with the discharge petition, that's it. And now everyone wants to jump on board. I swear to God, if American democracy is saved literally only because Trump was too much of a pedophile to ignore. Yep. In deep red Kentucky, where Dems have zero chance of winning, would you suggest people vote for Massey? Massey's probably the best Republican in the House. Again, still awful. But at the very least, he's been, like, beefing with Trump for a while, and I think that's funny. Don Bacon said he'd vote in favor of a bill demanding the Justice Department release files related to Epstein, but expressed confidence in the House Oversight Committee's work in releasing information related to the case. Tim Burchett said he'd vote for the measure when it comes to the House floor. That's already enough, man. Enough House Republicans have already indicated that they'll vote for it. We have more than the number of people who signed the discharge petition. And the White House has not left a lot of room for moderate dissent within the Republican Party. According to the White House, according to Trump many times over, all of this is a Democrat hoax. You're falling for it if you spend any time thinking about it. Just focus on the affordability agenda that, you know, the new word affordability that he learned right after Zohran Mamdani won. They have not, like, succeeded in giving Republicans any way of expressing dissent without just openly opposing the party. In essence, they've forced a loyalty test, and it's not going the way they wanted to. To your point, apparently the pressure on Boebert was so intense she got even more convinced there's a conspiracy. I don't know if this is true. It's just somebody saying it in a tweet. But it is a congressional correspondent for the New York Times, so my understanding is that the relentless pressure campaign on Lauren Boebert that has included carrot, stick, good cop, bad cop, has made her even more dug in, suspicious, and convinced there's a conspiracy at play. There is a conspiracy at play. The president is a pedophile, and they're trying to cover up the Epstein files. It's a very simple conspiracy, but it is at play. It's never been more at play than it is right now. It's very in play. This is what happens when you cultivate a base of people who thrive on conspiracy and then try to convince them that everything's fine when you're obviously doing a conspiracy, you know? People don't like that. It just doesn't work you're not satisfying people. You're not triggering their dopamine receptors. You're not giving them what they want. Yeah, conspiracy fact, honestly. The fact that even Lauren Boebert is like a MAGA diehard too, that even she's shifting on this. Remarkable. If anything, the fact that her and Marjorie Taylor Greene were some of the people who shifted over means to me they were always more sincere than the average neocon. There are Republicans in Congress right now who were tepid neocons during the Clinton administration, freakish MAGA acolytes under Trump, and now they're all being quiet about the Epstein files. They're the real suits. They're the real deep state fucks. They're the real, like, silent killers, the people who just sit there and do whatever they're told as long as it keeps them in power. At least Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert and such are crazy and authentic enough that they would actually be concerned about something like this. I can't believe I'm saying it, but, like, the authenticity of earnest populism might actually be the killing blow to the populist movement of the Republican Party. Isn't that crazy? Who could have guessed? Certainly not I. My beautiful partner is looking for cats. Where might they be? Nobody knows. Time is a flat circle? Certainly. Yeah, no, it's really interesting stuff. It's really, really, really interesting stuff. Populism's the double-edged sword, I suppose, right? I mean, you get a lot more zealotry when you bring people like that up. If anything, I mean, I don't know. There's a million things to say. I guess the most pointed thing, and maybe the most inappropriate thing of me to say, but it's true anyway, is that, like, if this was a real serious fascist government, they would have already had Boebert taken care of. They would have had enough people taken care of that they wouldn't be worrying about this. At the end of the day, that's the final option for the Nazi regime, the Soviets, whatever, truly authoritarian governments, you know? You don't get this kind of internal dissent because they don't survive long enough to dissent. But this is an influencer presidency, you know? Everyone wants to talk like they're the scariest dictators in the world, and then when it comes down to it, you know, no one wants to do the wet work. Thank God for that. Their hope was that, you know, random stochastic terrorism would do the job for them, but no. So like the Chinese government? I mean, the Chinese government does disappear people, possibly because they actually believe in the project they're trying to put forward. Trump's approval ratings declined noticeably during the shutdown. Man, thank you, Schumer, for ending that, you know? Man, look at that. His approval ratings held steady for half a year and then started plummeting during the shutdown, and they were like, we need to end this state of affairs immediately. Am I wrong for saying I have far more respect for Boebert than I do for Chuck Schumer? Lauren Boebert is almost certainly a better person than Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is one of the most evil men in D.C., without question. I have far more respect for lunatic fascist populists than I do for the soulless, faceless, mindless suits who do have no principles, no bonds, no allegiances, no ideology, just shift from position to position to benefit those in power. 100%, yeah. And which is and I'm consistent on this, one of the reasons why I've said that I think Trump is almost certainly one of the least evil people in his cabinet, you know? Because Trump is incredibly authentic. I mean, he lies all the time, but you can trust him to do that at least, right? I mean, he can't whatever he has in his mind just dribbles out of his mouth. It's very, very difficult to get him to orchestrate. Like, he's not even doing the Epstein conspiracy. Right, he's not doing a cover up really. A reporter will ask him, "Hey, how do you feel about the Epstein stuff?" And he'll say, "Shut up. Don't bring it up again. I'm very mad at you for bringing it up. It didn't happen." You like, it's not like, if this is conspiracy slop, it's not exactly like a Sherlock novel, you know? It's like, we all know that he's a pedophile. Everyone knows he's a pedophile. You get me. So yeah, credit to Boebert and MTG and so on. Yeah, the world's worst kept secret. Chuck Schumer's just fine. Just milquetoast. Preferring fascists just makes you a fascist. Chuck Schumer prefers fascists. Chuck Schumer explicitly prefers fascist governance to progressives taking control of the Democratic Party. That's not like a conspiratorial lefty position. That's like a well-known and consistent part of his plan. You can't keep falling for that shit, man. I would not rather have Marjorie Taylor Greene in charge of the government than Chuck Schumer, because Chuck Schumer at the very least would be competent. But I do think Chuck Schumer is more evil. Like in the circles of hell, as it like kind of, you know, as it concentrates down, there are few people that I imagine more evil than these people who just enable the evil around them but have no ideological tie themselves. Do you know why that is? It's for the same reason that I stopped doing debates. It's because I realized that I've enjoyed debating horrible people, you know, neo-Nazis and the like, and, you know, you have your arguments, and you rarely convince the person you're arguing with, but the point of an argument is to sharpen your sword and to convince the audience. But now people on the right, nobody believes in anything. Nobody does. Nobody on the right does. And I have no interest in arguing with people who will gleefully switch their position from one to another based on what they think would be more based or a better rebuttal in the moment. There's no come to Jesus moment with them. There's no point where they can go, "Oh, wait." And then, don't get me wrong, I don't expect them to repent right there. Nobody does that, you know. But they're never flustered because they never believed in anything to begin with. All of it was a pantomime. It was a rhetorical performance. It was improv. Everything that I said to them was just a pitch. It was a prompt for them to respond to, you know. What could I say now that would be the most based? That's all they have. And I think a lot of people in government operate that way. I think that kind of like anti-empiricism is pervasive in a lot of places, not just on the right, but, you know, mostly on the right, to be fair. There are far more inauthentic people on the right than there are on the left. That's without a doubt, without a doubt. I do despise these people. I do. I don't think of them as people the same way that I am. I really don't. I think that you need to abandon so much of your faculties of reason, or you need to do away with so much of what I consider to be a fundamental part of being a conscious person in order to behave that way shamelessly, reflexively too. It's not like they put cognitive effort into it, right? They just slip into it. And that to me is, I don't know. I can't stand, I really can't stand it. I have a deep hatred for these people. Far more than I ever could for some like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, by the way, I hate, and I'm not buying her redemption tour at all, you know? But at the very least, in her behavior, you see glimmers of sincerity. Often limited glimmers, don't get me wrong. She's still very performative, but it's a difference that matters to me. And it's a frustration that still like burns in me quite a bit, you know? My trauma aside, Lamau, she's sincere about being evil? Yes, but that makes a difference. That makes such a big difference. There's such a huge difference between arguing with a racist because they genuinely believe that it is good to be racist versus a person who's racist because they enjoy taking the position of being racist for the sake of the performance. You know what I mean? You can't ever convince a person out of a bad position if they don't even know if they believe the bad position themselves. Anyway, you can't convince fascists out of a bad position either. Oh, don't get me into this again. If a person sincerely believes something, it is possible to sway them. If a person doesn't sincerely believe in any way, it is impossible to sway them. Most fascists are to some degree anti-empirical, and their beliefs are shaky at best, you know? They don't have concrete, you know, epistemologically rooted, you know, reasons for believing everything they believe. It's usually like an emotional impulse, but usually even people who are guided by those emotional impulses and who kind of like post hoc invent the explanations afterwards still have some sincere belief in it. Or to put it another way, many racists have very bad, inconsistent reasons for being racist, but they still are racist. They have some emotional like root in that belief. They would be disrupted in some way if one of or multiple of their positions were challenged or rebutted, you know? They might shift to another one, but it would still get to them. It's not the same as if they were just treating it all like improv. There are degrees of sincerity here. I think I'm a pretty sincere person. I stand by my positions, you know? So, for the most part, I like to feel like I'm talking to people on a level playing field. It's one of the reasons why I just can't stand debate now. I mean, I've said this many times before, but it's just, I think that right now the only way to survive as a like MAGA operative on the right, you know, anyone who advocates for the positions of modern day conservatives, you have to be so far gone. It's very bad here in America, too. I've seen, like, reform voters over in the UK who come across as a lot more earnest and sincere than MAGA voters here. I think it has to do with, like, the vice signaling, you know? It's just less common elsewhere, I think, maybe. You used to make the argument that it's not about arguing with the other person or changing their mind. It's about audience capture and convincing those who can't be reached. Yeah, but it doesn't work when an entire group of people also don't believe in anything. I'd like to think I have my finger on the pulse of the behavior of conservatives these days pretty well. It is my job to pay attention after all. You have to understand. Listen, buddy, there's a reason why the apex of like internet debate culture was towards the end of Trump's first term and the beginning of Biden's, because there was an era of reconciliation or maybe reconciliatory intentions from the right where they understood that Trump's first presidency was a failure and they had to try to reach out to more people. As soon as the MAGA movement realized they didn't have to reach out to more people, they had enough to try to end things as it was, they stopped trying to incorporate and started to consolidate. All of that interest in fair debate dried up. Jesus Christ, one of the right's biggest actors just got shot in the neck doing a debate. Can't you tell the era's over? God's pitching you every signal he can here. He's like, it's done, it's done, it's done. Counting or not counting, gang violence. That's like, that's, what signal do you need? Who? I don't remember his name.